When you think of the French Revolution, you probably think of names like Napoleon, Louis XVI, and Maximilien Robespierre, and you've most likely learned about them in history class. But there's a man whose name you've probably never heard, a man who was behind the scenes of the entire revolution and arguably had more power than anyone in France during the early 1800s. His name was Joseph Fouché. He was born in 1759 in Nantes, France, and went to school to become a priest. But his plans of becoming a priest fell apart when the French Revolution erupted in 1789. He eagerly joined the revolution, seeing his path to power from the beginning. He joined the Jacobins, the radical revolutionaries in France at the time, and he quickly became their president. This marked the start of Fouché's political career, and pretty soon, in 1792, he was elected to the National Convention of France, the first republican government of France since the monarchy had been abolished. The creation of this National Convention led to the suspension of the current king, Louis XVI, and now the National Convention had to vote on his fate. Fouché voted for his execution, and this vote aligned him with the radical revolutionaries or Jacobins of the French Revolution and set the stage for his rise to power. Because Fouché voted for the king's execution and established himself as a radical in the revolution, he played a big part in the Terror, the period of time in France where non-radicals or non-revolutionaries were getting their heads cut off in the streets. And Fouché even earned the nickname the Butcher of Lyon. He oversaw mass executions and destruction of buildings, but slowly distanced himself from the radicals, aka the Jacobins, as he knew the political landscape was changing. Once he sufficiently distanced himself from the radicals, Fouché then set out to take down their leader, Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre held lots of powerful positions over the years of the French Revolution and was at one point the president of the radical group the Jacobins, just as Fouché once was. To take down this powerful figure, Fouché worked behind the scenes to convince other figures of the revolution that Robespierre's radical ideas were a threat to their survival. This led to the rise of more conservative ideas in France and Robespierre being overthrown. It became known as the Thermidorian reaction, and it was also the end of the Terror, meaning people weren't getting their heads cut off in the street anymore. After shifting the political landscape of a nation and leading a large political coup, Joseph Fouché was noticed by Napoleon Bonaparte, another rising politician during the year 1799. As a general, Napoleon made Fouché the Minister of Police, essentially the boss of the French police, which was the most important and arguably most powerful office Fouché held during his career. It allowed him to create a network of spies and informants, and they collected information on everyday citizens, the most powerful political figures, and even Napoleon. He was able to gather enough intelligence to manipulate the public and politics, and he was able to stay ahead on all events of the nation. The equivalent of insider trading today. After Fouché gained power through his methodically constructed web of intelligence, Napoleon started to resent him. Becoming so jealous of his power, he dissolved the office Fouché held, but eventually reconstituted the Ministry of Police 2 years later, putting Fouché back behind the scenes of France. By this time, it was too late to touch Fouché anyways, as he had spent years making sure he diversified his relationships to ensure he was always in power behind the scenes, no matter who wore the crown. This was true to the extent that after Napoleon lost the throne due to his defeat at Waterloo, the brother of Louis XVI, Louis XVIII, took power, and Fouché maintained his position of the Minister of Police under him. This meant that the Minister of Police of France at the time had voted for the execution of the current king's brother, but King Louis XVIII wouldn't dare touch the man who advocated for his brother's death, as he knew Fouché was too powerful. Joseph Fouché played a key role in the French Revolution, all from behind the scenes. He may not be the most famous figure from the French Revolution, but he's definitely the most interesting. And one might say he was at one point the most powerful man in France. Fouché's creation of the intelligence networks that contributed to his power laid the groundwork for more intelligence organizations and spying as we know it today. Fouché's life should remind you of the power of information and that one's influence is not limited just because they act in the shadows.